Level 1. The invisible start. It starts with a number on a screen. Not a phone call, not a deal, just a balance $340,000 sitting in an account you opened quietly 6 years after your first real paycheck. You don't tell anyone. You drive the same car. You wear the same jacket with the frayed cuff. You eat lunch at the same place, order the same sandwich, because nothing about your life is supposed to look different. That's the first rule you learn, even though no one taught it to you. Visibility is a liability. At work, you're a mid-level analyst. People talk over you in meetings. Someone makes a joke about your budget vacation. You laugh along. Inside, you do the math on compound interest for the 40th time this month, watching the curve bend upward in a way that feels almost obscene against the backdrop of your modest apartment. You haven't bought anything that would give you away. No watch, no car, no new address. You've read enough to know what happens to people who flash money too early. The resentment, the loans they can't say no to, the family members who suddenly remember they love you. So you stay small, you stay quiet, you let the number grow in the dark like something you're not sure you're allowed to have yet. Level 2. Learning the mechanics. You start moving money the way other people start lifting weights, carefully, with a plan, ashamed to admit how seriously you're taking it. Index funds first, then a taxable brokerage account, then a separate LLC for the rental property you bought under a name that isn't quite hidden but isn't advertised either. $12,000 a month now flows in from places that have nothing to do with your day job. Dividends, rental income, a consulting contract you do on weekends that nobody at your office knows about. You learn the language fast: depreciation, basis, pass-through income, the quiet machinery rich people use to keep their money from looking like money. Your accountant becomes the only person who knows the full picture. You meet him in a small office above a dry cleaner, not because you can't afford better, but because anonymity has become its own kind of luxury. You start saying no to things you used to say yes to. Not big things, small declines, a coworker's wedding gift fund, a timeshare pitch from your brother-in-law. You feel the first flicker of something colder in you, a calculation running underneath every interaction. Who wants something from me? What do they think I have? Nobody suspects yet. You make sure of that. Level 3. The quiet network. By now you know 3 people who live like you do, quietly wealthy, publicly unremarkable. You found each other the way people find anything dangerous, carefully, slowly, through someone who already trusted you. You meet for coffee, not steak dinners. You talk about tax law the way other people talk about sports. One of them, a woman who owns 4 laundromats and a stake in a self-storage facility, tells you the real rule of this life. You start structuring your finances around invisibility. A revocable trust, an LLC that owns another LLC. Your name appears on almost nothing directly. Net worth, $2.1 million. You know the figure exactly. Nobody else does, not your parents, not your closest friend, not the woman you've been seeing for 8 months. You tell yourself this is responsible, discreet, smart. But there's a loneliness creeping into it now. A wall going up brick by brick between you and everyone who still thinks you're just getting by. You let her pay for dinner sometimes, just to keep the story consistent. Level 4. The discipline of disappearing. You buy your first significant asset that could blow your cover. A small apartment building, 8 units, cash flowing $4,300 a month after expenses. and you make sure it's owned by an entity with a name that means nothing to anyone who isn't looking for it. Your job has become almost theatrical. You still go in, you still nod through meetings, but the salary that once defined your life is now a rounding error against your portfolio. You quietly turn down a promotion, visibility again. A promotion means a new title, a bigger office, people watching more closely, questions about how you afford things you're not supposed to afford yet on that salary. You've started thinking in decades instead of months. A friend mentions a get-rich-quick crypto scheme at a barbecue, and you watch his enthusiasm with something like pity, knowing the actual game is slower, duller, and far more ruthless than he understands. The cost shows up in small moments. You can't fully celebrate your wins. There's no one to celebrate with who would understand the numbers, and the people who could understand are the ones you're most careful to keep at a distance. You've built a life that looks identical from the outside and has become almost unrecognizable on the inside. Level 5. The architecture of wealth. Net worth, $7.8 million. You stop calling it wealth. You call it the structure, the trusts, the holding companies, the insurance vehicles that shield assets from lawsuits you haven't been sued in yet. You hire a second advisor, this one specializing in asset protection. He asks you questions you've never said out loud to anyone. What happens to this if you get divorced? What happens to this if you die? What happens to this if someone comes looking? You start drafting a will that names people you barely talk to anymore, because they're the only ones who don't know enough to be dangerous. At a dinner party, someone asks what you do for work, and you give the same flattened answer you've given for a decade. Analyst, nothing special. Nobody pushes. Nobody ever pushes. That's the strange privilege of looking ordinary. People stop being curious about you the moment you seem unremarkable. But you notice the toll differently now. You catch yourself rehearsing lies before they're even needed. You flinch slightly when someone asks to see your tax return for a loan application, not because you're hiding anything illegal, just hiding everything. The wealth has become a second skeleton, invisible, holding you up in a shape no one else can see. Level 6. The quiet authority. You're no longer just protecting money, you're deploying it. You write a $400,000 check into a friend's failing business, not as a loan, as a controlling stake disguised as a favor. He doesn't fully understand the terms. You make sure the paperwork is clean enough that he never has to. People start coming to you, slowly, carefully, the way animals approach a watering hole they're not sure is safe. A cousin needs $30,000 for a medical bill. A former coworker wants advice on an investment opportunity that you immediately recognize as a pyramid scheme, and you have to decide how much truth to give him. You've become a quiet gravitational force in the lives of people who don't know your actual mass. The currency now isn't dollars. It's leverage, knowing things about people's finances they don't know about themselves, holding the kind of patience that only money this size can buy. You sit on the board of a small nonprofit, anonymously funding half its operating budget through a donor-advised fund that hides your name from the annual report. Respect where you find it comes without recognition. You're the reason the roof got fixed. Nobody will ever say your name in that sentence. Level 7. The strategic broker. Net worth, $34 million, spread across 11 entities, 4 states, 2 offshore structures that exist purely for legal tax efficiency. You've checked twice, with 2 separate law firms who don't know about each other. You stop thinking of yourself as wealthy. You think of yourself as a system administrator for money that has its own gravitational logic now, growing faster than you can spend it, faster than you can even track without quarterly reports from a team of people who don't know what the others are doing. You broker introductions instead of writing checks directly. A call to one contact gets a struggling business owner a meeting that changes his life. He thanks. You've built deniability into kindness itself. The isolation has a shape now. You go to galas you fund and stand at the edges. You date carefully, vetting through instinct and paperwork both, terrified less of gold diggers than of anyone who might accidentally see the full shape of what you've built and recoil from it. Or worse, want it too badly. Your reflection in the mirror some mornings looks like someone running a country no one elected him to run. Level 8, the architect. There is no level above this one, only quiet maintenance of what already exists. You haven't checked your net worth in 4 months. It doesn't change anything you do today. The structure runs itself now: trustees, fund managers, attorneys, a small staff of people who each see one slice of your life and none of them the whole. You sit in a house that looks modest from the street, in a town no one would guess, and you think about the version of yourself from level 1, hunched over a screen, terrified that $340,000 might disappear if he blinked. He would not recognize this version of you. Calm, distant, unbothered by numbers that would have once kept him awake. You funded a hospital wing last year. Nobody knows it was you. You insisted on that, the way you've insisted on invisibility at every level, except now the insistence feels less like strategy and more like the only shape your life knows how to take. Power you've learned doesn't announce itself. It just quietly removes you from rooms you used to need to be in. Freedom, somewhere along the way, became a smaller and smaller thing, even as the number grew larger and larger. You wonder some nights who you would have been if you just spent it. You'll never know. That was never really an option, not after level 3. Not after the first lie you told to protect a number nobody else was allowed to see. Somewhere across the city, a young man opens his first brokerage account, depositing $4,000 he's been saving since his first job. He stares at the number like it's the beginning of something enormous. He thinks money will set him free. He doesn't know yet what it will cost him to keep it invisible. But he will.